The year is 323 BC. A hot night in June. In Babylon, the heart of the ancient world, the most powerful man alive is dying. He is only 32 years old. From Greece to Egypt, from Persia to the borders of India, Alexander has bent the known world to his will. He has crossed deserts, shattered empires, founded cities, and turned his name into a legend. But now, he lies helpless in bed. Not defeated by an army. Not killed by an assassin. Not struck down on the battlefield. In our history, Alexander the Great was stopped by fever. Some ancient sources speak of illness. Others speak of poison. Modern historians still debate the cause. But in the popular imagination, one possibility has always remained powerful, that the ruler of the world may have been destroyed by something as small as a mosquito. His generals lean close to his bed. They know that if Alexander dies, the empire may die with him. One question hangs over the room. Who will inherit the world? In real history, Alexander is said to have whispered a single word, Kratistos. To the strongest. One word. One answer. One spark. And with that, the empire began to burn. Alexander died. His generals turned on one another. The empire split into rival kingdoms. The ancient world entered a new age of war, ambition, and fragmentation. Rome would rise. Carthage would fall. Latin would shape the West. Christianity would spread across Europe. And history would become the world we know today. But in this documentary, we change one moment. What if the fever broke? What if Alexander opened his eyes? What if the man who had conquered the East lived long enough to turn toward the West? In this world, Alexander does not die in Babylon. He survives. The funeral never happens. The empire does not collapse. The generals do not divide the world among themselves. Instead, they return to the map spread across the royal table. Arabia. Carthage. Italy. Rome. Gaul. The western edge of the known world. Welcome to an alternate history where Caesar never becomes the master of Rome, where Rome never becomes the master of Europe, and where the Mediterranean is not Latin, but Greek. Alexander lives. And now, he looks west. Spring, 322 BC. Alexander has recovered. The fever that almost ended his life has passed, and with it, the fear that his empire might collapse overnight. To his soldiers, his survival feels like a miracle. To his enemies, it feels like a warning. Alexander has returned from the edge of death. And he has not returned quietly. Historical sources suggest that before his death, Alexander had already been preparing new campaigns. Among the most important was a campaign into Arabia. Arabia was not simply a desert on the edge of the map. It was a strategic bridge between the Red Sea, the Persian Gulf, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Indian Ocean. Whoever controlled Arabia could control trade, naval routes, spices, incense, ports, and movement between East and West. For Alexander, Arabia was not the final goal. It was the doorway. Alexander understands something that many land empires forget. An empire that wants to rule the world cannot live by armies alone. It needs ships. It needs ports. It needs supply lines. It needs the sea. So he gives the order. The docks of Babylon become the center of a massive naval project. Cedar from Lebanon. Sailors from Phoenicia. Engineers from Greece. Laborers from Mesopotamia. Pilots familiar with the Persian Gulf. Veterans who had followed Alexander all the way to India. All of them are pulled into one great machine. A new imperial fleet begins to form. The goal is ambitious, to surround Arabia by sea, secure its coasts, control its wells and ports, and turn the peninsula into a logistical platform for future conquest. The Macedonian army is not built for the desert. Its strength lies in discipline, armor, cavalry, and the terrifying wall of the Phalanx. But Alexander has learned from every land he has crossed. In Persia, he learned how to absorb an empire. In Egypt, he learned the power of sacred kingship. In Central Asia, he learned the cost of distance. In India, he learned that supply lines can defeat even the greatest army. This time, he will not simply march into the desert and hope the army survives. He will use the coast. The campaign begins with movement on two fronts. The fleet advances through the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea. The land army follows the coastline, taking wells, harbors, and trading stations one by one. Arabian tribes resist where they can. Some fight. Some negotiate. Some choose survival and accept Macedonian authority. Against the army that destroyed the Persian Empire, resistance is difficult to sustain. Within a year, the strategic coasts of Arabia are under Macedonian control. But Alexander is not interested in ruling empty sand. He is interested in connection. Arabia becomes the hinge between Babylon, Egypt, the Red Sea, and the Indian Ocean. Trade from India can now flow west under Macedonian protection. Troops can move faster. Ships can move farther. The empire becomes more than a conquered map. It becomes a network. And now, Alexander makes a decision that changes everything. He does not return permanently to Babylon. Instead, he moves his imperial center toward the Mediterranean. To Egypt. To the Nile. To the city that bears his name. Alexandria. Alexandria becomes the new jewel of the empire. It faces the sea. It connects the east to the west. It is Greek, Egyptian, Persian, and something entirely new. From this city, Alexander can see the next great obstacle. Across the western Mediterranean stands a power older, richer, and more experienced at sea than Macedon. Carthage. By 320 BC, Alexander is no longer merely the conqueror of the East. He is becoming the architect of a world system. But there is one truth he cannot ignore: to rule the Mediterranean, he must control the sea. And in the Western Sea, one power stands above all others. Carthage. Founded by Phoenician settlers, Carthage is a city of merchants, sailors, silver, ships, and strategy. It controls trade networks across the Western Mediterranean. Its influence reaches Sicily, Sardinia, North Africa, and Iberia. Carthage is not like Persia. It is not a vast land empire waiting to be struck at the center. It is a maritime republic. Its power moves through harbors, colonies, contracts, and fleets. If Alexander wants to move west, he cannot simply march around Carthage. He must break it, absorb it, or force it to kneel. In our real history, Rome and Carthage would fight for more than a century in the Punic Wars. The struggle would decide the future of the Mediterranean. But in this alternate history, Rome does not yet have time to become Carthage's great rival. Alexander arrives first. And Alexander does not think in centuries. He thinks in campaigns. From Alexandria, Cyprus, Phoenicia, and Greece, Alexander gathers one of the largest fleets the ancient world has ever seen. Phoenician sailors, once subjects of Persia, now serve the Macedonian king. Greek engineers prepare siege equipment. Egyptian grain feeds the crews. Carthaginian spies report the impossible: Alexander is preparing not just an invasion, but an amphibious war. A war from the sea and from the land. Carthage is experienced at naval war. Its captains know the winds, currents, and hidden dangers of the Western Sea. But Alexander has built his reputation on one principle: never fight the enemy's war. Force the enemy to fight yours. At Tyre, years earlier, he had taken an island city that many believed impossible to conquer. He had turned engineering into a weapon. He had forced land and sea to obey his strategy. Now he applies that same thinking to Carthage. If the Carthaginians dominate naval maneuver, Alexander will change the nature of the battle. He turns ships into floating siege platforms, catapults on decks, archers behind shields, boarding bridges, heavy infantry ready to turn a sea battle into close combat. The sea becomes a battlefield of wood, iron, fire, and stone. The first battles are brutal. Carthaginian commanders know how to strike and withdraw. They try to isolate Alexander's ships, ram them, and break the fleet apart. But Alexander's commanders keep formation. The Macedonian fleet advances like a moving fortress. When Carthaginian ships close in, Macedonian marines board them. When they keep distance, siege engines punish them from afar. Carthage wins victories. Alexander loses ships. The sea is not conquered in a day. But slowly, the balance shifts. The Eastern Fleet pushes west. Greek cities in Sicily begin to turn toward Alexander. Carthaginian allies hesitate. Merchants begin to wonder whether the future belongs to Carthage or to the man who has never truly been defeated. Then comes the second blow. While the fleet closes the sea, a land army advances across North Africa. From Egypt, through Cyrenaica and along the Libyan coast, Macedonian forces move westward. Their progress is slow, but relentless. Carthage is now threatened from two directions. From the sea, Alexander's fleet cuts its trade routes. From the east, his army approaches the walls. Carthage has money. Carthage has mercenaries. Carthage has experience. But Alexander has something more dangerous. Momentum. The siege lasts for months. Carthaginian mercenaries fight hard, but their loyalty depends on payment and survival. Macedonian veterans have followed Alexander across half the world. They have seen him wounded. They have seen him lead charges in person. They believe his luck is divine. And once again, Alexander appears where the danger is greatest. At the walls. At the breach. At the front. To his soldiers, this is not just a king giving orders. This is the man who shares the risk. The man who bleeds with them. The man who turns fear into attack. Finally, Carthage falls. But Alexander does not destroy it. He is not interested in ashes. He is interested in systems. Carthage's trade routes, docks, shipyards, silver connections, and naval expertise are folded into the Macedonian Empire. Its merchant elite is forced to serve a new master. Its fleet becomes part of an imperial navy. Its wealth begins to flow east. With Carthage subdued, the western Mediterranean opens. North African grain. Iberian silver. Phoenician ships. Greek ports. Egyptian logistics. All of it now moves under one imperial vision. The Mediterranean is no longer divided between east and west. It is becoming Alexander's lake. And now, across the sea, another city watches in fear. A rising republic in central Italy. Ambitious. Disciplined. Stubborn. But still young. Rome. 318 BC. Alexander is now 37 years old. He is no longer the young king who crossed into Asia with impossible dreams. He is a veteran ruler, a master of logistics, and the commander of the most experienced army in the world. Carthage has fallen. The Western Sea is open. Now Alexander turns north. Toward Italy. Toward Rome. This is where alternate history meets one of the greatest military debates of all time. What would happen if Alexander's Macedonian phalanx faced the Roman legion? In real history, Rome eventually defeated the successor kingdoms that came after Alexander. Roman flexibility overcame the more rigid Hellenistic phalanx. The legion became the military symbol of the ancient West. But there is a difference. Rome did not face Alexander himself. And in 318 BC, Rome is not yet the empire of Caesar and Augustus. It is not yet the ruler of the Mediterranean. It is a strong regional republic, fighting for control of Italy against Samnites, Etruscans, and other rivals. Dangerous, yes. Disciplined, yes. But not yet unstoppable. Alexander arrives in southern Italy through the Greek cities of Magna Graecia. To many Greeks there, Rome is a growing threat. To Alexander, those cities are not foreign. They are part of the Greek world. And wherever Greek cities call for protection, Alexander can claim a reason to intervene. The Roman Senate understands the danger immediately. This is not a local king. This is not a tribal enemy. This is the man who destroyed Persia, took Egypt, crossed the Hindu Kush, fought in India, conquered Arabia, and humbled Carthage. For Rome, this is not another war. This is the test of survival. The Roman consuls gather their armies and march south. The battlefield is chosen in the open lands of Campania. Rome trusts its infantry. Its soldiers fight in flexible formations, able to move across broken ground and exploit gaps. They are not easy to terrify. They carry shields, javelins, and short swords. They fight close. They fight stubbornly. They fight as citizens defending their republic. Across from them stands the Macedonian war machine. The Phalanx, with Sarissa spears stretching forward like a forest of iron. Hypaspists, elite infantry trained for speed and precision. Archers, skirmishers, engineers, and cavalry from across the empire. And beside them, something many Romans have never seen before. War elephants. The Roman plan is clear. Do not attack the Phalanx head-on for long. Survive the first impact. Find gaps. Move around the spear wall. Get close enough for the short sword. Against later Hellenistic armies, this logic would one day work. But Alexander understands the weakness of the Phalanx better than anyone. He does not use it as a simple wall. He uses it as a trap. The Phalanx holds the Roman center in place. The elephants strike at the flanks, shaking formations and breaking rhythm. Skirmishers harass the Roman lines. Cavalry waits for the moment of disorder. Alexander watches. He does not rush. He lets Rome commit itself. Then the battle begins. The Roman front line advances. Javelins fly. Some strike Macedonian shields. Others fall short. The Phalanx moves forward. Slow. Dense. Terrifying. The first Roman soldiers meet the Sarissas and discover the problem. Before they can use their swords, they must pass through a storm of spear points. They push. They cut. They die. But Rome does not break easily. Groups of soldiers try to move between formations. Some reach the Macedonian lines. Some exploit rough ground. For a moment, the Roman system begins to show its strength. Flexibility. Courage. Pressure. And then Alexander releases the elephants. The Roman soldiers have faced cavalry. They have faced hill tribes. They have faced disciplined enemies. But elephants are something else. The animals do not simply kill. They disrupt. They create fear. They open space. And space is all Alexander needs. As the Roman line bends, Alexander leads the companion cavalry in a wedge formation. Not against the strongest part of the Roman army. Against its nerve center. The command position. The place where orders become action. The place where a battle becomes either discipline or chaos. The Macedonian cavalry strikes. The Roman consul fights bravely. His guards close ranks. For a few moments, the battle becomes a storm of horses, shields, spears, and blood. Then the consul falls. The Roman army does not collapse instantly. But the signal is clear. The center is pinned. The flank is broken. The commander is dead. The enemy king is still alive, still attacking, still visible at the front. Rome begins to lose cohesion. And once cohesion is gone, courage is not enough. The retreat begins. Then the rout. Rome has lost battles before. But this is different. This is a defeat not by a neighboring tribe, not by an Italian rival, but by the ruler of a world empire. The road to Rome opens. Alexander does not erase Rome. That is not his way. He destroys enemies when he must, but he prefers to absorb useful cities. Rome has discipline. Rome has roads. Rome has law. Rome has a political elite that understands power. So Alexander does what he has done before. He keeps the city alive, but changes its place in the world. The Roman Senate becomes a provincial council. Roman armies are reorganized under Macedonian authority. Latin elites learn Greek. Roman gods are identified with Greek gods. Jupiter becomes Zeus. Mars becomes Ares. The Roman Republic survives in form, but not in destiny. It will never become the master of the Mediterranean. There will be no Caesar crossing the Rubicon. No Augustus founding the Roman Empire. No Colosseum as the symbol of imperial spectacle. No Latin West as we know it. Rome remains important. But it is no longer the center of history. It becomes one city among many in Alexander's Hellenistic world. By 310 BC, Alexander is about 45 years old. Older. Harder. More political than the young conqueror of Persia. But the fire remains. After Italy, he pushes influence deeper into the Western Mediterranean. Iberian silver becomes part of the imperial economy. Southern Gaul enters the Macedonian sphere. Expeditions reach the Atlantic coast. Greek colonies and military cities appear farther west than ever before. Perhaps even the coasts of Britain are visited by imperial scouts and traders. Alexander does not need to conquer every forest, every mountain, every tribe. He needs the routes, the ports, the rivers, the centers of exchange. He has learned that a world empire is not built only by battle. It is built by cities. Everywhere he goes, Alexander founds or reshapes cities. These cities are not simply military bases. They are cultural engines. Greek theaters, local temples, royal roads, marketplaces, libraries, administrative offices, mixed populations. Macedonians, Greeks, Persians, Egyptians, Phoenicians, Jews, Babylonians, Italians, and many others live under one imperial structure. The empire is not equal. It is not peaceful in the modern sense. It is held together by force, hierarchy, taxation, and royal authority. But it is also connected on a scale the ancient world has never seen. The greatest transformation is language. In our real history, the ancient Mediterranean became divided between a Latin West and a Greek East. But in Alexander's longer-lived empire, that division never fully forms. Koine Greek becomes the language of administration, trade, science, diplomacy, and high culture from the Atlantic to the Indus. Local languages survive. People still speak their mother tongues in homes, villages, temples, and markets. But power speaks Greek. Science speaks Greek. Empire speaks Greek. This changes everything. Babylonian astronomy can travel more easily to Egyptian mathematics. Greek philosophy can meet Persian statecraft. Phoenician navigation can merge with Macedonian military planning. Roman engineering traditions can be absorbed before Rome ever becomes dominant. Knowledge moves faster because the elite world shares one language. The result is not modern science overnight. But it is acceleration. A larger intellectual network. A bigger world of scholars. More cities exchanging ideas under one political roof. And then comes the deepest change of all. Religion. Alexander's empire is not religiously simple. It does not erase local gods. It absorbs them. Zeus can be linked to Ammon. Greek gods can stand beside Egyptian, Persian, Phoenician, and Mesopotamian traditions. The king himself can be treated as a semi-divine figure, a living bridge between peoples. This is syncretism. A world where gods merge, names change, rituals adapt, and religion becomes a language of imperial unity. In such a world, the future of Christianity changes dramatically. In our real history, Christianity spread through the Roman Empire. Roman roads, Roman cities, Roman law, Greek-speaking Eastern communities, and eventually imperial conversion all helped transform a small movement into a world religion. But in this alternate world, Rome never becomes that machine. There is no Roman Empire to adopt Christianity. No Constantine as we know him. No Latin Church rising from Rome. No Christian Europe in the same form. A Jewish religious movement may still appear in the Eastern Mediterranean. The spiritual conditions of Judea may still produce prophets, reformers, and messianic hopes. But without Rome's imperial structure, Christianity may remain more regional. A mystical Eastern faith. A movement among many. One voice in a crowded Hellenistic religious world. It may spread. It may influence. But it does not conquer Europe in the same way. Europe does not become Christian Europe. It becomes Hellenistic Europe. Its sacred world is a fusion of Greek philosophy, Egyptian mystery cults, Persian ideas, local traditions, and royal ideology. Temples remain centers of ritual. Philosophical schools remain centers of debate. Science and religion do not become separate modern categories, but they coexist under a different intellectual climate. There may be no medieval church as we know it. No papacy ruling from Rome. No crusades in the same form. No Inquisition in the same form. No Renaissance rediscovering the ancient world, because the ancient world was never lost in the same way. But this does not mean a perfect world. Empires create order, but they also create oppression. A single imperial culture can connect people, but it can also crush local identities. Alexander's world may be more cosmopolitan, but it is still ruled from above. The question is not whether this world is a paradise. The question is whether it becomes modern faster, or whether it becomes trapped under the weight of its own unity. Around 300 BC, Alexander dies. Not at 32. Not in a fever dream in Babylon. But older. Perhaps in Alexandria. Perhaps in Babylon. Perhaps in a capital that combines both visions, East and West, monarchy and city, conquest and administration. He dies around the age of 55. Still mortal. Still flawed. Still dangerous. But no longer just a conqueror. A founder. In our history, Alexander did not live long enough to build stable institutions. His empire depended too much on his charisma, his army, and his personal authority. When he died, the center vanished. But in this alternate timeline, he has more than 2 decades after Babylon. Time to organize succession. Time to raise heirs. Time to bind generals into a system. Time to turn conquest into government. Time to make the empire harder to tear apart. There are still civil wars. There are still ambitious generals. There are still rebellions. But the empire no longer shatters immediately. Alexander's world survives long enough to become normal. And once an empire becomes normal, it becomes history's foundation. So what would the world look like today? What would the year 2026 look like in the world where Alexander lived? Let us imagine it. First, language. English might not be the global language. Latin might never become the root of French, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, and Romanian in the same way. The linguistic map of Europe could be completely different. A modern descendant of Greek might dominate diplomacy, science, business, and technology. From Britain to India, educated people might still use a language descended from Koine Greek. The words of power might not be Senate, Empire, and Republic in the Roman sense. They might be words shaped by Macedon, Alexandria, and Babylon. Second, geography of power. Washington, London, Paris, and Rome might not be the central symbols of world history. The great capitals might be Alexandria, Babylon, Athens, Carthage, and new imperial cities founded along the old routes of conquest. The Mediterranean might remain the political center of the planet for far longer. The Atlantic world might rise later. Or differently. Or under Hellenistic institutions instead of European nation-states. Third, science and technology. In our history, the fall of the Western Roman Empire, the fragmentation of political authority, and centuries of instability changed the path of knowledge. The ancient world was not simply forgotten, but much was lost, preserved unevenly, or rediscovered later. In Alexander's surviving world, the great libraries, schools, engineering traditions, and trade networks may remain connected for much longer. That could mean earlier advances in mathematics, astronomy, mechanics, medicine, and navigation. Perhaps the Industrial Revolution comes centuries earlier. Perhaps steam power is developed in late antiquity. Perhaps oceanic exploration begins under Hellenistic fleets. Perhaps by 2026, humanity is not merely reaching for Mars, but already living among the outer planets. Or perhaps the opposite happens. Perhaps one huge empire slows competition. Perhaps central control limits invention. Perhaps stability becomes stagnation. Alternate history does not give certainty. It gives possibility. Fourth, politics. The modern nation-state may never dominate the world. France, Germany, Italy, Turkey, and many other countries might not exist in forms we recognize. Instead, the world might be organized through provinces, cities, leagues, and imperial federations. People might identify not as citizens of nation-states, but as citizens of a cosmopolis, a world city, a universal order, an imperial civilization claiming to unite humanity. It sounds inspiring. It also sounds dangerous. Because a world without nation-states is not automatically free. It may simply be ruled by something larger. Fifth, culture. There may be no Renaissance as we know it. Because there may be no need to rediscover classical antiquity. Greek sculpture, drama, philosophy, and architecture never disappear from elite culture. They evolve continuously. Modern cities might be filled not with Roman arches and Christian cathedrals, but with vast Hellenistic libraries, temples of blended gods, philosophical academies, and monuments to philosopher kings. The modern world might look futuristic and ancient at the same time. Not Roman. Not medieval. Not Western in the way we understand it. But Hellenistic. And all of it begins with one night in Babylon. A fever. A bed. A room full of generals. In our world, Alexander dies. His empire breaks. Rome rises. Christianity spreads. Europe becomes Europe. The modern world follows the path we know. But in this alternate world, Alexander survives. He conquers Arabia. He defeats Carthage. He humbles Rome. He turns the Mediterranean into the heart of a global Hellenistic order. One man lives 10 years longer. And the world becomes unrecognizable. History is often shaped by armies, kings, ideas, and empires. But sometimes, it turns on something smaller. A fever that breaks. A breath that returns. A heartbeat that refuses to stop. If Alexander the Great had lived, the future of Rome, Europe, religion, science, and language might have changed forever. The world we know may not have been built by Alexander's death alone. But his death opened the door for everything that followed. In another universe, that door never opened. In another universe, Alexander stood up in Babylon, took the map in his hands, and looked west. The conqueror of the East was not finished. The West was next. Thank you for watching. If history had taken this path, do you think the world would have been better, or more dangerous? Share your thoughts in the comments. And join us next time, when we explore another moment where history could have changed forever.